Okay, so this video is just going to go over kind of some of the basics of solving an equation in algebra. Um, One thing I want to mention is really this is only just if you feel like you need this review. If you are able to show your work like I have on the example questions on the worksheet, and you're getting the right answers, feel free to just work on that on your own. If you're having some trouble, you get to one that you're not quite sure, come back and look to see if there's a problem kind of like it. And that might give you a little bit of a place to start off with one of the ones you might not be getting. So one of the first things I want to talk about here is just kind of why we show our work in algebra. Um, and I know I've mentioned this to a few of you at times, but the biggest thing is when we show our work in algebra, like I did in those examples, a lot of it is trying to keep things that are a lot to keep track of in our head on the paper so that we don't have to try to keep them in our brain the whole time. That's really the point of algebra. We turn something that might be hard to figure out an answer to, in this case, what number times 3 minus 5 is equal to negative 3? That's a really hard problem to just think about, really hard. But when we do algebra, it reduces it to some steps that if we always take the right steps, we're going to get the right answer. So the first thing I might want to mention here when we're looking at specifically solving an equation is how do I decide what things to do first? My only rule with equations is that I do the same thing on both sides. And as long as I do that, my answer is going to eventually be right. But I might not necessarily have the best method, the most efficient method. So when I'm looking at solving these, keep in mind the goal here is always to get x by itself. And if we look at x and look at what's happening to x, all we're doing is we're really undoing whatever's happening to x. So in terms of the order of operations, x is being multiplied by 3, then we're subtracting 5. So if I just kind of write that down, x is being multiplied by 3, and then we're subtracting 5. I want to go backwards through those and undo each step to get rid of each thing. So the opposite of minus 5, if I want to get rid of that, is a plus 5. When I do that, they're going to cancel out. So I'm going to do that to both sides of my equation, plus 5 plus 5. It's going to cancel out here because those are opposites of each other. The 3x is still there. Sometimes I'll draw an arrow down. And on this side, I can add those together. Negative 3 plus 5 is 2. And then I can go to my next step. Well, what's the opposite of times 3? Let's divide by 3. So I'm going to divide by 3. This is the way you usually write it. Divide by 3. And I get my answer. X is 2/3. It's okay that that's not a whole number. That's something I kind of see a lot with people that are a little unsure of their algebra, is they go, I can't divide 2 by 3. That can't be right. Yeah, you can divide 2 by 3. It's 2/3. Trust that you're just undoing the steps to get back to x, and the answer will come out right. That's the nice thing about algebra, is we don't have to think about the answer. We just have to think about undoing everything that's happened to the x, and we will get the right answer at the end. So this is also a two-step equation right here. Kind of everything that we do in algebra is kind of, especially in algebra 1, is to get back to a two-step equation. Because if we get to here, they always kind of look the same. So if I look at this one, n is being divided by 3, then we're adding 2. So I'm just going to make a note of that. You obviously don't have to do this. It's being divided by 3, and then we're adding 2. So when we want to solve this equation, we're just going to go backwards through the steps. The opposite of adding 2 is subtracting 2. So I'll do that, and it'll cancel those out. Plus 2 and minus 2 are opposites. So now I just have this n divided by 3 equals, and that's negative 3. So negative 1 minus 2 is negative 3. So I got rid of that. Then the opposite of dividing by 3 is multiplying by 3. So I'm going to multiply by 3 on both sides. That's going to cancel out my divided by 3 and just leave me with n. And negative 3 times 3 is negative 9. So that's the process we're going to go through to solve an equation. We just look at our steps, work our way backwards. Whatever the opposite of that is, we work our way backwards. We see plus 2, we're going to subtract 2. We see divided by 3, we're going to multiply by 3. From there, everything that you did in Algebra 1 last year that was harder than that is just a matter of getting back to a two-step equation. So if you see something like this is what we might call a multi-step equation. but it's just meaning that we need to simplify before we can move on to our actual algebra steps. When we simplify, we can just simplify one side. This side's just 3. This side we can simplify. And since we have 4 times a quantity, we need to distribute. So when we take 4 times 2x, we get 8x. When we take 4 times -3, we get -12. And it's still equal to -3. We didn't actually change anything about the equation. We just rewrote this side in a simpler way. Now we can go back through and say, okay, that keeps happening. What's the opposite of -12? Well, it's adding 12. So that cancels out. 8x equals 15. It's terrible, 15. What's the opposite of x times 8? Well, it's dividing by 8. And again, this one comes out as a fraction, which is perfectly fine. X equals 15/8. That is simplified. If it wasn't simplified, Desmos could help you. I might just go ahead and pull up Desmos really quick, just to kind of show you that. Let's see how fast it loads here. So if I had to do, if I was just going to check 15 divided by 8, it gives me a fraction or a decimal, but I can also just turn it into a fraction and see, okay, yeah, 15 divided by 8 is the simplest form. So there we just had to simplify a little. Same thing here. On this one, it's really just a two-step equation that's got some simplifying to do first. On this one, there's no parentheses, but I see some like terms. I see a -2 and a -3, and I see a 5x and a 2x, that those can be combined together. 5x and 2x makes 7x. -3 and -2 makes -5, still equal to 4. Now I'm back to a two-step equation. In Algebra 1, and it's going to be the same in geometry, every goal or every equation is really just a two-step equation in disguise, right? They're not going to be more complicated than that until we get to things like exponents or square roots, because we have either multiplication or division and addition or subtraction. Those are really the only two things we had in Algebra 1. So now I'm going to go ahead and work on this. Opposite of -5 is +5. Get rid of that. Gives me 7x. 4 plus 5 is 9. I'm trying to get x, so I'm dividing by the 7 to get rid of that 7 on both sides. 7 goes away, and I get 9/7. You might be used to equations that come out as whole numbers. In that case, it might have been easier to not show this work. You can probably reason your way through it. When you have answers like this, you're probably not reasoning your way to 9/7. So this showing your work helps you keep that out of your brain so that you don't have to spend as much time trying to remember what's going on. You can trust those algebra steps to get you to the right place. Trust the algebra, right? That's the goal. Finally, the last one here that makes it look a little bit more complicated, we've got variables on both sides. This one does look a little bit worse, but your goal here is still to look at what makes this not a two-step equation and fix that. So I see that there's variables on both sides. I don't like that, so I'm going to fix it. Usually I'm going to think, take the smaller one. -2x is smaller than 3x. So I want to get rid of this -2x. And the way I get rid of -2x, or just, to completely get rid of it, is I'm going to add 2x. Because if I take -2x plus 2x, they're going to cancel out. Now, my only rule with equations is do the same thing on both sides, so I better add 2x to this side. We usually like to line up our like terms just to make it easier to add, but 3x plus 2x is 5x. I still have this plus 2. On the other side, those canceled out, but I still have this 17. It's positive. I don't write that. Then I can keep going, right? So now I can go, okay, well, I see that plus 2, so I'm going to -2, -2. 5x is equal to 15. And then the opposite of times by 5 is divided by 5. So I will do that to both sides. And I get x equals 3. So overall ideas here. Number 1, you have to do the same thing to both sides. Number 2, showing your work is intended as a way to help take that mental load off of you. Algebra is a process that helps you solve the problem without you having to think as much. Trust the algebra, it will take you to the right answer. Number 3, every equation that you're going to see is really just a two-step equation in disguise. You might have to simplify first. You might have to get rid of a variable on one side, but every single time you are going to end up right there at a two-step equation. And when you get to that, you should be home free because you've practiced two-step equations a whole lot. So give those a shot. I think there's only 12 of them on the worksheet. Check your answers, make sure you're doing those right. And then on Thursday when I see you, we'll go back to some algebra or go back to some geometry, knowing that this algebra stuff is going to keep showing up all year. That's why we're practicing it.